Be lifted high, be lifted high.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Midweek Refuel, Wednesday, or June, almost said July, June 28th. And tonight we're going to be finishing chapter 3 in the book Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. And if you have not purchased the book, highly recommend that you get the book. It's got some great questions at the end, things that you can interact with. You can get a workbook as well, I believe. I should do some research into this, but I think the book has places where you can answer the questions and kind of follow it along, a little bit like a devotional. But it's been really good. I'm into chapter 4 now because I try to stay a little bit ahead of where we're at, and just really enjoying just the foundational principles that we're learning in this book. And tonight won't be super long because we're right at the end, but there's some really good stuff. So he's setting us up here. He's been talking about trusting God. He's been talking about sort of our belief system being our anchor. And when we face challenges that we don't have solutions for, he is encouraging us to go back to the foundation that we have in our relationship with God. And tonight he kind of builds on that theme, and he talks about how Jesus is our way. And in the book, he gives an example of traveling out to kind of a out of the way place, and he was looking for this person's house. And so he stopped to get directions from, I believe it was a farmer, and the farmer gave him directions somewhat like, you go down 3 miles on this road and you turn right at the sycamore tree, and then you'll see this barn and you turn left. And kind of the way that someone who had been there for many, many years would know all the landmarks and would know where to turn. But if you're a person who hadn't been there before, those kinds of directions can be a little bit confusing. And his point was, we are kind of like the people who are not from that place, and we are often sort of trying to find our way through life without having some very good directions, right? But he said, one of the examples he gave was that he actually traveled to this place with the farmer, and the farmer knew, maybe not 100 different ways, but at least 5 or 6 different ways of getting there. And so he felt confident to just follow the farmer's directions because he had been there, he was well versed in the area, and he knew where to go. Well, he's using this as an analogy for how we navigate life. We have Jesus who is dwelling within us, and he knows how to navigate life on several fronts, right? One is that he's God. 2 is that he's done this before. He came and became like us and felt the limitations that we had the same struggles that we had, so that he could identify with us and actually give us victory, right? And so he's saying in this particular situation that we should be following the direction of Jesus, who is in the vehicle with us, who is in life with us, who is living within us, because he knows how to navigate better than even our GPS systems, right? Because Jesus has done this before, and he is very, very skilled at all of this. He says, often our approach knowing and doing God's will this way, they ask, let me read that again. Often people approach knowing and doing God's will this way. They ask, Lord, what do you want me to do? When do you want me to do it? How shall I do it? Where shall I do it? What will the outcome be? But that is not the way God led people in the scriptures. The Lord didn't send us off like an errand boy. He intends to accompany us on the journey. So there you go. He's in the vehicle with us, and he's giving us turn-by-turn directions. He did say, I am the way in John 14:6. Jesus knows the way. He is your way. Can you trust that God to guide you as the farmer led me, going back to the story, pointing out each turn along the route? But your life is too valuable to waste by trusting your own best thinking. You are human and prone to making mistakes. God alone is perfect and infinitely wise. He knows the future. He is all powerful. Your life is in far better hands when you surrender it to God and his leading. But as long as you rely on your own judgment, you'll worry every time you must make a decision that you might take a wrong turn. So this one hits home to me today because I have a situation that has been going through my mind over and over and over and over again. Perhaps you can relate. And I am vacillating between a lot of different ideas and thoughts. Well, if I do this, this could be the outcome. If I don't do this, this could be the outcome. So what should I do? Well, here I'm getting an answer, right? Like the Lord is helping me to see through this analogy that really what I want to do is lean on his understanding, lean on his truth, lean on the ways that he would approach things, and get the wisdom that he would bring to that situation. Now, sometimes I'm impatient and I want to get there today. And I don't know if you're like this too, but I'm, how do I say this? I know I have discernment, but sometimes I don't trust my own discernment. I'm feeling something, and then I doubt whether that's discernment or just me feeling uncomfortable. And so I have to work through that and understand, like, okay, what is the truth here? What does God say about whatever? So if the issue is about forgiveness, what does God say about forgiveness? Well, okay, that one's easy because he says in every circumstance I should forgive. Okay, so that works. I know I need to forgive. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily I'm going to trust in that relationship again. I'm not going to trust in that person again, but I can forgive. What I can do is say, God, I'm not holding on to this anymore. I'm giving this to you. I'm giving them to you, and I'm not going to allow this to control me anymore. So I'm going to choose to do what you say in this situation, even when I don't feel like it, right? And so that's incredibly important. So there's that aspect, right? So he's in the vehicle with us. He's in our being with us. He wants to lead us. He wants to guide us into truth. And too often when we choose the way that seems right to us, it leads us into a place of worry. It leads us into a place of being concerned about things that maybe we shouldn't be concerned about. And so with that in mind, he actually gives us a couple of scriptures, which will both be really familiar to you. Because God says he doesn't want us to live in anxiety. Philippians 4:6 says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. That's a theme for me today because that was something I read this morning, and it's just the Lord highlighting it to me right here in this moment. The second verse is casting all of your anxiety on him because he cares for you. So for me, taking these verses into account, I have some anxiousness about pursuing this course of action. I'm nervous about it. I don't feel at peace about it. And so what I feel like I need to do in this situation is what these verses are saying, is to cast that anxiety upon him, give it back to him and say, Lord, I want to feel peace before I proceed with what I feel like you're telling me to do. And so whatever it is, the situation that you're walking through right now, you want to be in that place of peace where your body, soul, and spirit are aligned, and you can operate in heaven's purpose, because anxiety isn't what's driving you. And too often, anxiety just looks like, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do, but we don't take the time to get the clarity that we need from the Lord. So I just want to encourage us that he's with us, he's navigating, he's our co-pilot. He has chosen to do life with us. He has chosen to co-lead with us. I don't understand why he does that, because it would seem like him leading would be the best course of action, but he has invested himself in us. And as a result of that, he has confidence in us. So let's leave anxiety aside and let's trust that he wants to lead me. He says, what does God want me to do today? As you follow Jesus one day at a time, he will keep you in the center of God's will. Few details at first. God often calls people to follow him without giving all the details at the beginning, right? We see that throughout scripture. He calls Abraham And he says, leave your people and go, and I will make you a great nation, right? Or I will make your descendants as many as the sands on the seashore. And there isn't a whole lot of direction. There isn't like, okay, Abraham, I need you to leave here and I need you to go to this place. He just says you have to leave your family. And so sometimes for us, it's kind of that kind of direction. Like, okay, I want you to step out and I want you to do this. And you're just going to have to trust me about where we're going to go, which is hard to do because we like certainty. I've said this to you before, at least on a Sunday morning. It's a quote that says, the reason we deal with so much anxiety is that we've made an idol out of certainty, and we like a sure thing. Who doesn't, right? Like if you buy a product, you want the product to work. You want you want what has been sold to you to actually be true, and so you look for proof of that truth. You look for a contract that says, if I do this, this is what I'm going to get in return. If you buy a car, you expect that the terms that you have agreed to will be held to, right? And same type of thing in our relationship with life, right? Like we want things to work out the way that we expect them to, but it doesn't always work that way. And so here's the hope that we have is the trust that we have for him, and that he has good intentions as he leads us. And so that's important. If God were to give you a specific plan for your life, you would likely put your focus on the plan rather than on him, which is really true. I was talking about this on Sunday that someone said, I think it's Bill Johnson said, that oftentimes when we elevate concepts or principles over the presence, we're looking for a kingdom without a king, because we are elevating the principle. And I've seen that happen so often, and we forget that it's about really the relationship, right? And that's important because even throughout scripture, it almost seems like God contradicts himself. He chooses the serpent to be the symbol of the enemy, and then Israel's in the wilderness, and they are needing to look at a snake to be healed on a pole, right? You're like, God, why would you use that analogy? Why would you use a completely different analogy? But really, it comes down to we have to have that sensitivity in our relationship with him, valuing his presence, so that if one day the snake is bad, maybe the next day it's good, and he's wanting us to be sensitive enough to know the difference. And so when we follow principles, when we're just working the principles, we sometimes don't know what he is actually wanting to convey to us. And so sometimes this is what I love about my time in Youth with a Mission is it was so much about you need to hear from God for yourself. You need to hear that God is speaking to you and have the confidence in him speaking to you. And just as a side note, that's why, we live in such a world of distraction. This morning I came in and I'm doing things, and I have this game I play on my phone, and before too long, I find myself like 30 minutes down the road. I've been playing this game for half an hour and haven't done anything, right? And we live in a world that's just screaming distractions at us. And I think that just really keeps us from being sensitive to his voice and the things that he is talking to us about. So be encouraged that he loves you. He wants to be your navigator. He wants you to have a connection and relationship with him, and he wants you to do that with an element of trust in him. And that trust is just going to grow and grow and grow. And I think if there's ever a theme to where we're at in the world right now, it's that. So let's summarize what we've learned in this chapter. Number one, God is far more interested in a love relationship with you than he is in what you do for him. Okay, let me read that again. God is far more interested in a love relationship with you than he is in what you do for him. That's so important, right? Because we have elevated ministry. We've elevated, what do I do? Okay, now I've got this Jesus inside of me. Now, what do I do about it, right? And as much as it's important, he gave us a command. He gave us the command of love one another as I've loved you. And so sometimes we put the emphasis on love another, which is good, but we forget that the fuel for that is the love that we've received from him. And so That is of utmost value, is the relationship that you have with him. Yes, it will motivate you to do other things. It will cause you to want to do great exploits, as Hebrews tells us. But at the same time, it has to come from that motivation of loving him. It's a little bit like, Jesus goes to the home of Mary and Martha, and Martha is all about, making sure everybody gets fed and drinks are served and hospitality is there. And while she's doing all that and she's frazzled and all that, Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus, and she gets frustrated. I can picture this in my head. She's frustrated because she's doing all the work and she sees Mary just sitting there and not doing anything. And so she approaches Jesus and says, "Hey, Jesus, can you tell my sister she needs to come help me because I'm overwhelmed?" And yet Jesus tells her, "Listen, Mary's chosen the most important thing," right? It's not in this situation, obviously we're called to be servants, but in this situation, he's saying she's chosen relationship. And that's the most important thing. There'll be time to do all those other things, but right now, this is the most important thing. And that's the relationship she has with me. So interesting story that reinforces this point. He is all you need. Christ in you is your way. He is your map. So Christ is in us. He's our directional standpoint. He's our directional device. He's our Siri, but he's way better, right? Because it's, whatever. I'm going to go down that road. But he's in us. He's guiding us. We can ask him and he will answer. And so I just want to encourage you, focus on that relationship, focus on experiencing him speaking to you and guiding you and directing you. And you're going to see some amazing things happen in your life just by listening to him and by building your hearing muscles, so to speak, so that when you face situations that you don't have answers for, you've created this relationship with him that helps you to be led by him in those circumstances, not just in the bad, but also in the good times as well. So have a great week. Blessings on you. We'll be back for chapter 4 next Wednesday, I believe. Yes, I will be here next Wednesday, trying to figure out, I think next week is 4th. At least Tuesday is the 4th, but Wednesday we'll be back here. So again, have a great week. Build that relationship with the Lord. Excited to hear your testimonies and how God is speaking to you and you're seeing breakthrough in areas that maybe you didn't think you could see breakthrough. All right, see you next week.
Be lifted high, be lifted high.